There are over 100 streaming services available here in the US, and I'm gonna rank all of them in a tier list. 100. You heard that right. 100. 100. A Benjamin. Some of them are free. Some of them are paid. All of them want your eyeballs, like some Witch of the Woods, hoping for the final ingredient in her eternal youth potion. Wow, quarantine is really making my imagination go into overdrive. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to make a tier list of all 100 or so streaming services. So let's put all the logos up on the board. Holy f***, that's a lot of logos. Let's get to work. First things first, here are the rules. Each service will be given 0 to 10 points in 5 different categories: price, originals, back catalog, variety, and accessibility. As a side note, I decided to score originals only by quantity, not by quality, because really, one man's Tiger King is another man's Love is Blind. And if you don't know which one's the bad one in that sentence, well, point proven.
Carol Baskin.
Once the scores are calculated, each service will be placed into its appropriate tier. 1 to 10 points is F tier, 11 to 20 an E, 21 to 30 a D, 31 to 35 a C, 36 to 40 a B, 41 to 45 an A, and 46 to 50 reaches the coveted S tier. Insert angel music here. That's a lot of numbers to throw at you, so here's an example. YouTube TV earns a 1 on price because it's $50 a month. Ouch. Then you get access to YouTube Originals, which let's give that 5. On top of that, you have a large back catalog of on-demand content because of the TV aspect of it, so we can give that an 8. And it'll of course earn 10s for both variety, which YouTube TV has a lot of, and accessibility, because you can pretty much find it on any device under the sun. That's a grand total of 34 points, placing it squarely in C tier. Now that you know how I've decided to score all of these, let's start moving large chunks of services into some of these lower tiers. Fortunately for all of these services, not a single one landed all the way down in F tier, and that's because of device compatibility. These services all came prepared with your basic bases covered. Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, iOS, Android setups, which kept them all out of F tier. Good job, guys. Now let's talk about E tier and why a lot of niche services ended up here. So any niche service by its own design is not made for everybody. Therefore, it won't ever score high enough to reach those upper echelons of our tier list. That means you'll see your usual suspects here like History Vault or Ginks, which are specifically tailored to a certain audience, but, and this is a little spicy, it also scoops up a lot of the single sports services: NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, and so on and so forth. I am sorry, sports fans, but there is just not enough variety there. They suffered in 2 particular categories, and that's what kept them all the way down in E tier. One is price, because these single sports services can be really expensive, around $40 a month in some cases, which kept them kind of on the lower end of scoring on price. And then on top of that, variety is always a problem because it's a single sport. And honestly, I could not weigh a single sports service any differently than, say, a service that only plays Broadway shows, which exists, by the way, Broadway HD. Who knew? By that logic and by that scoring, that places 26 different services down in E tier. That's about a quarter of our list. Now let's do the same with D tier, which, by the way, has the most amount of streaming services out of any tier in this list. These are the kinds of services that can be really appealing, but usually have a couple of caveats here and there if you're interested in subscribing to them, and they really kind of have to be for you. For example, Philo scored 26 points in this tier. They got a 7 on price, they got a 0 for originals, Philo doesn't make their own original content. They got a 5 on back catalog and a 7 on variety because Philo has a very specific niche that it's filling. It doesn't have cable news channels, sports channels, local channels, but it does have a lot of entertainment and lifestyle services, so we can give them a 5 and a 7 there, and then a 7 on accessibility. Overall, 38 services landed here in D tier. Most of these have, again, one of those big caveats. They don't make their own originals, or they don't have a lot of variety. They're sort of niche services or skinny bundles that are missing some of the bigger components of those higher tier services. Wow, that is 2/3 of our list just about. And I'm sorry, I grade really tough. This is a tough competition. It's a platform eat platform world out there, people. Deal with it. All right, moving on to C tier. This is the tier where we start seeing a lot of the more well-known services out there. And they'll still have a couple of sort of like, ooh, that might not be for me aspects to them, but overall, they're very good services. Here's what a lot of them have in common. Low or free price points, larger back catalogs, and tons of variety. For example, Crackle, Pluto TV, and Stars all landed in C tier, along with 20 other services. I already mentioned YouTube TV and what it scored. Apple TV Plus is kind of in a weird place. It doesn't quite make the cut on the upper tiers. It doesn't have a huge expanded library. There's not a bunch of back catalog of video on demand options except for their originals. So it kind of landed right in the middle. And then you see stuff like Sling TV, which are sort of these skinny bundles that are pretty good, but they're also expensive. So again, much like YouTube TV, kind of lands somewhere in the middle. At this point, we have 13 services left. So let's see who made it into B tier. Now, these are services that are really awesome, but usually had one limiting factor or were sort of high averages across the board. ESPN Plus almost had it all. Great price point, excellent back catalog, good originals, hello 30 for 30 documentaries, love you, and also super accessible across a bunch of platforms. But in the variety category, even though it scored higher than the single sport streaming platforms, it's still only sports or sports related. So it got dinged just a tiny bit there and kept it out of that A and S tier. Acorn TV suffered a very similar fate here. It's all catered toward British television, British content. So there's not a ton of variety, but because it does cross genres, you can have a British comedy, a British drama, so on and so forth. It did score a little bit higher there. So it ended up in the same tier as ESPN Plus, but for the same reasons, sort of like just a small limited bit of variety ding there, kept it from those A and S tiers. Showtime and Epix are those two that sort of scored high averages across the board, landed them in B tier. Not really anything to kind of go crazy about in A or S tier, but they did well enough to land them up in the higher tiers. So good for them. Hulu Live TV actually scored really, really well in just about every category, but at $55 a month, it's such an expensive option that that price score kept it just shy of reaching A tier. So sorry Hulu TV. It was a really tough one to keep you down in B tier, but I had to do it. Lastly, Peacock is here, which their service doesn't officially roll out to everyone until July 2020, and I scored them based on that availability, not the Comcast-only soft launch they're doing right now. And maybe, just maybe, we'll see Peacock in a higher tier next year. We're down to just 7 services. At this point, the criticism is so finely pointed. I mean, one little tiny nitpick could keep a service out of S tier. So these are all excellent services. You cannot go wrong by any of them, really. It just depends on what you want. But here we go. Let's talk about A tier. Oh, Disney Plus. Disney Plus is great for families. I mean, and their original slate is pretty good so far. I love the Imagineering story. I love The Mandalorian, obviously, who doesn't? But at the end of the day, Disney Plus is a service made for families, and it is very focused on having family-friendly content only, which holds it back just a little bit in the variety category. So I'm really sorry, Disney Plus. Like, you're gonna either have to start putting R-rated movies on your service, which I don't see happening, or you're never gonna make it an S tier. So you're gonna have to just deal with that. You're gonna have to sit here in A tier and think about what you've done, which is provide nice content for families. Guess that's all right. CBS All Access. Okay, so full disclosure here, legally I'm required to tell you that CNET's parent company is in fact Viacom CBS, which also owns CBS All Access. And there are actually other services in this list that are also part of the Viacom CBS family, like Pluto TV, Showtime. There's probably more. I don't even know. This is a big company, okay? I have no idea. All I know is that we're now part of the family that owns RuPaul's Drag Race. It's definitely more than 2. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about CBS All Access. It is objectively a good service. There's a pretty big back catalog. There's a live TV component. It's relatively cheap, and there are a slate of originals like Picard and The Twilight Zone available if you are so inclined. So it actually scored really high on the list. I was kind of surprised, but Also not surprised because, a lot of people really like those originals, and CBS All Access has a live TV component, which broke its tie with Peacock and nudged it up into A tier. And now we come to HBO. So this was very weird to rank because HBO Now is the current iteration of the way to get standalone HBO. It's $15 a month. You get all of the HBO originals, Succession, Westworld, blah, blah, blah. And then Warner Media will be launching HBO Max at the end of May. And it will include all of the things you get with HBO Now and also original content from studios that Warner Media owns. Warner Brothers, DC, all of those things are extras. They're going to be doing these Max originals with franchises like Looney Tunes. So it costs the exact same amount as HBO Now, which made it really weird sort of like rank them as separate entities because I have a feeling at some point in the next, let's say, calendar year, Warner Media is probably going to merge these services, which means they scored almost exactly the same with the exception of originals, which HBO Max ended up getting a couple extra points in because it's making these Max originals. So that kept it 1 point shy of S tier, but generally speaking, HBO Now, HBO Max, right in the same category. They're in A tier. Both excellent options for you, I guess. I would say if you're going to pay $15 a month, it seems like you'd want to go with Max. I don't know. That leaves our final 3 services, which all landed in the coveted S tier. Yes, Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime Video are our champions. The best of the best, the cream of the crop. These companies spend billions of dollars in developing original content. They have massive back catalogs. They have tons of variety. They're literally available on every platform under the sun. And they have good, cheap, entry-level price points. All great things. Not a single one of these services scored any less than 8 in every single freaking category. The top scoring service, Amazon Prime Video. It got an 8 in price and 10s across the board in originals, back catalog, variety, and accessibility for a grand total of 48 points. Just too shy of perfect. Chances are you are already subscribed to at least one of these S-tier services, or at least you're borrowing the password of someone who does. We just ranked over 100 streaming services. Good for us, internet. Now, I know a lot of you are super mad about at least one of these services not ranking as high as you thought it would, which is probably in your personal S tier. So you tell me down in the comments what your S tier is. What are the 3 services you literally cannot live without? Or even the 1 service you can't live without? Is it maybe Crunchyroll? Are you a huge anime fan? Maybe you love Broadway HD. I don't know. I don't know your life. Drop it down in the comments. Tell me what you must have in your life to feel complete streaming-wise. Oh my God. I almost forgot. We have a challenge for you. CNET is doing this really cool thing where we're giving you a coin budget and challenging you to create the perfect streaming package. The link is down in the description. Come over and play with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can find CNET on all those platforms and we'll have a really good time. Tell us what you want to spend your money on. I think it'd be really great to see all of your